This week, I am Obehi to be precise, standing in for your usual anchor, Ogochuka Ona. This edition of Frontline is special because we will be celebrating the Eid al-Kabir with our brothers and with our Muslim brothers and sisters here in Benin, otherwise known as the Feast of Sacrifice. We will look at its significance, the traditions, and the role it plays in fostering a national unity. I have here with me in the studio to discuss more on this a lawyer and Muslim scholar, Nuruddin Asunogie. Good day, sir. Welcome to Frontline.
Good day. Thank you for having me. Good day, viewers.
Let's start off with the history. Can we look at how it all started, the Eid al-Kabir celebration, or this spiritual exercise, how it started?
Thank you. Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, who is otherwise faith, the father of monotheism, had no issue. He had been married for decades, he didn't have no issue, and his life was basically one of sacrifice. Everything that he had devoted to the worship of the. And in one of the occasions, when people were expressing shock over his generation, any injury to your person, or you looking at me and you take pity of me and you become disrespectful of that which you ought to do for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Ibrahim set out to do just this. Iblis, that is the Satan, of course, will always know, had a feeling of what was going to happen. What is consistent with its nature, of course, is to disrupt, is to put obstacle between man and man, becoming obedient to his maker. Went to the mother to say, are you aware that your son is being taken to where he ultimately will be decimated? And the mother said, you get out of my sight. Threw stones at Iblis. Iblis went to Ismail. That is the one who was the object of the sacrifice. Your father is taking you out. The intendment, of course, is to kill you. Would you acquiesce to that? He's an old man. Why would he want to live and take your life? If someone must die, it shouldn't be you. Your father should go. Of course, Ibrahim was rejectful. Salatu wasalam was that now the consciousness of Allah ought to be the only thing that crystallizes in the consciousness of man, in the heart of man. If Ibrahim was beginning to have that which was a threat to his absolute unconditional devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that needed to be taken care of.
That event that happened centuries ago, how does it relate to this present day celebration of Eid al-Kabir?
Yeah, the relationship is simple. Ibrahim is said to be the father of faith. Ibrahim's life was one lesson in sacrifice. Ibrahim's life is the life that we all are supposed to live. There are issues that come between us and the realization of the essence of our being. There are issues that tend to clog, that make it practically impossible, chimerical for us to realize why we are here. So we chase sublunary things. What this does is a reminder that these things do not count. We must win ourselves of all of these things. So if I get involved in sacrifice, it is symbolic. But what it represents in actuality, if that is not realized, then the entire symbol becomes an exercise in dissipation. It does mean that if I were to occupy a position of authority, resources that represent common patrimony, I should not peculate. Because it will take the love of the world that comes between me and realizing what my essence of being is, to want to take what does not belong to me. And if I genuinely acquire, it should not coagulate around me, because the coagulation of it around me will mean a denial of others who do not have the same opportunity that I have, because these opportunities are not given in equipoise. So if I have, I must be prepared to make the sacrifice of sharing. I must be prepared to make the sacrifice of accommodating others who do not have the capacity. And once you do that, what does it do? It deepens the love that was drawn. Its provenance, do not forget, is located in your love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you do all this, the love that you have for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now ossify or metamorphosizes into love for society. And once society is saturated with that love, it becomes a life of bliss, a life of comfort for not just those who become the beneficiary, including you that is the source of the spread of this love.
Okay, so we have some traditions like any other spiritual exercise. There are some traditions involved, and one of the major traditions in celebrating Eid al-Kabir is the Hajj.
Yes.
What is the spiritual benefit of Hajj?
Well, the spiritual benefit of Hajj is that all of that had happened in the vicinity of the landscape where Hajj is performed today. This promise that was made by Ibrahim, Ismail wanting to be sacrificed, the stoning of the devil. All of these are issues that are reenacted in Hajj. As the pilgrim gets into what you call the point where you could take the seamless clothes, the ihram. The pilgrim dons the ihram, seamless 2 pieces of white clothes. When you do that, social stratification is abolished. Because when that does happen, you can't tell who a head of state is, you can't tell who a plebeian is. Everyone is attired, donning the same 2 seamless whatever clothes. Now, what does that talk about? It talks about the equality of being, or the opportunity for the equalization of us. That what ultimately differentiates us will be the action, the texture of our humanity. And so when the individual has put all of this, they are simply saying we are all congregating, testifying by action, speaking about the uniqueness of our being, and the uniformity of man, that no one person on the basis of race, on the basis of social stratification that is superior to the other. And so the white you put talks about immaculateness, and when they get involved in the throwing of stones, at 3 spots they will throw stones. The throwing of stones, of course, reenacts what Ibrahim and what Ismail's mother had done when she threw stone at Iblis, what Ismail had done when he threw stone at the devil, and what the father had done when he too threw stone at whatever the devil. So what this means is that you are not dealing with the physical devil that was with Ismail that tried to convince all of these 3 parties not to carry out that act. You are simply saying whatever is the devil in your life, you have stoned that devil. And once you have stoned the devil, that is a declaration of war. It means that you have sequestered yourself from whatever it is that the devil represents. It means that you are simply saying, I am today declaring independence from the devil, that I no longer will be under the tutelage of the devil or to take instruction to do the biddings of the devil. Once the individual does that, because we say this is symbolic, what the individual has done is connected to the life the individual will live within the context of that which is physical. Because in religion there is an ontological relationship between that which is spiritual and that which is physical or mundane. Once you luxate the nexus that connects these 2 phenomena, then religion becomes ocious, becomes absolutely irrelevant, because it must be contextualized, it must be exercised within a context. So when the individual does that and you say to hell with the devil, it will mean that you no longer will be responsible, as it were, for the affliction or any onslaught against those who are your members in humanity. Because do not forget, the Iblis, even before the attack of Ismail, before the issue of Ismail came, when he was first asked to prostrate to Adam, when Adam was created, he had rejected doing that, because he said man should not be created in the very first instance, because man would not only be felonious, he would exercise felonious influence over the rest of creation. Man would not only be a murderer, but he will exercise murderous influence over the rest of creation. So when you throw the stone, you are simply saying, I will not be a murderer, neither will I exercise murderous influence over the rest of creation. I'm not going to be a felon, neither will I do, because all of these offenses tend to diminish the capacity that humanity has to realize the essence of being. And so that's the symbolic nature of what you find that people perform in art. So when an individual undertakes that journey, If these are the reasons for which the individual went, he will be rewarded accordingly, but he does not have the reward of who had gone on Hajj. So it's not everybody who had gone. You can go 100 times, and yet it is not recorded for you as one who had gone on Hajj.
And so let's come to another very important tradition, the sacrifice of the ram.
Yes.
It is part of the Eid celebration. First of all, what's its significance? And then if you cannot afford a ram, does it mean you have not participated in that year's Eid?
The significance, like we said before, is the fact that the father of faith had demonstrated loyalty to his maker. That could not be faulted. And so for those of us who are practicing the religion, must be loyal, be faithful to God. And so when we sacrifice, we are simply saying, God, be the witness that we are saying that we believe in everything. And so that will be held accountable for if we were to deviate. For the individual who has the means to sacrifice, it is compulsory that he does, male or female. For the one who does not have the means, like we have said before, God does not punish you for that which he has not given you capacity for. Those who have, what they are required to do is that when you have, you slaughter. It is expected to be divided into 3 parts. 1 part for you and your family members to consume, another part for visitors, another part for those persons for whom life, as it appears, have donated a bouquet, so to speak, of despondency to. You know, say, no, I'm bringing one of hope, one of joy, one of fulfillment. So you distribute to those Muslims who do not have the means of getting one, so that while you are eating in your own home, they too have meat to eat.
Okay, so let's talk about COVID-19 now. Like we know, it has affected a lot of things. It has also, one of the things that affected also is religious activities. Just when we were beginning to, have respite from the virus, we have been put on red alert. Not that Edo State is one of the states put on red alert though, but parts of the country have put on red alert following the breakout of the Delta variant. So this year's Eid prayer, how do you think it will affect the current situation of the pandemic? How do you think it will affect it? Will it take away from the seriousness of the spiritual exercise?
It's not likely going to take away, particularly for states who are locking now. You see, what the entire exercise represents is an exercise in obedience. God or Allah was in a position to make us like the angels who do not have the capacity of disobedience. But if God had done that, the whole essence of us would have been lost. The ratiocinating capability that God had given to us would have become superfluous. But what religion does and what government is supposed to do that operates instead of God is to say, yes, whereas we can love those who superintend the affairs of man to legislate behavior for men, to legislate in a way that man does not become exposed to those persons who could choose to be animalistic in their behavior. While there is no regulation to checkmate that, of course, anarchy and discombobulation will reign supreme. When they said, observe the non-pharmaceutical whatever stuff, if we had done all of this in compliance like we are going to do when we found Ismail did with Ibrahim doesn't profess Islam, not that dumb. The one that gives intimation to one that we can say hate, enjoys fructification. But it's a culture of impunity. Even when we profess faith, we are very good in the breach, so to say, of things that that ought to be of monumental benefit to us. And so, if today we are told that, hey, there is a problem, like they have said in Saudi, we just will accommodate people who are within. We are not bringing any whatever. It's a way of containment. And all of this had happened in Islam. The Prophet Islam, for example, said, if you became aware that there is an outbreak of an epidemic in society B and you are in society A, do not go there. And if you are already in society B, do not move. What was he trying to do by curtailing the movement of people? Was to curtail the spread of the disease. That was 1400 plus years ago. And so today, it is not religiosity. It is an infatuated lunacy. When you begin to say, I'm a spiritual being, it is only what God says will be, will be. That is innate fatalism. Yes, we could have at first said, oh, I'm not going to eat food. If God says I will be 100 years, regardless of whatever, whether I eat food or not, I will be 100 years. The cells inside of me, of course, will become carnivorous. The hemorrhage, the internal hemorrhage that it will precipitate, of course, will make me die without fail. And so, sense was not given to us for the fun of it. And part of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be evaluating us upon when we return to Him at the end of our mundane odyssey is to what extent the ratiocinating capabilities we are endowed with was put into use. And so, if today there is outright danger, then Muslims will observe their Eid in their respective homes because Islam places priority on life.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Apart from being a spiritual exercise, do you think Eid has any role to play in fostering national unity?
Yes, a whole lot of it. Like I said, there is no spirituality if it does not have a base in the mundane. If I fast in the month of Ramadan, I go on Hajj, I pray 5 times a day. These are just things that I'm involved in. How are you a beneficiary of my fasting? How are you a beneficiary that I pray? You can only benefit if all of these things translates into me becoming a value-added person. One who is a bearer, a purveyor, so to say, of value to society. And so, what this exercise simply means is that at the end of the day, you must increasingly become solicitous for those who do not have. You must begin to say, oh, the life is not worth it. Because when you look at the world that we live in today, the virus of injustice, the virus of hunger, the virus of pain, including the kidnapping and all the stuff like that go on, they are a deep reflection of the absence of an appreciation of what life is. Oh, the man says, give me 1 million or 10 million before I release the person I have taken. What does he need that kind of money for? And why must he get the money at the expense of the life of another person? So these are issues that are supposed to be communicated, because the one who say give, you get the 1 million, you kill the other person, you live a miserable life that cannot be sentimentalized. And so your wretchedness becomes deepened even when you get the money, because in the final analysis, it isn't the volume of the money that the individual has that will determine whether the person becomes happy or sad or whatever. Is a state of the mind that is usually connected to the relationship the physical has with the inner being. And that inner being, once it is hollow, and it always will be hollow if it does not find an anchorage in things that are spiritual. Except that that which is spiritual must be objectified within the context of that which is physical. Only then it acquires dynamism, only then it acquires meaning. Outside of it is an exercise in ociosity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nuruddin Asunuge, a lawyer and Muslim scholar, for discussing with us today on the significance, traditions, and relationship of the Eid al-Kabir celebration in fostering